Welcome to Army Controller Training Module. Inspired by Shri Sanjeev Mittal, IDAS, Controller General of Defence Accounts. Lyrics by Shri Sanjeev Kumar, IDAS, Additional Secretary and Financial Advisor, Ministry of Rural Development, Government of India. Presented by Principal Controller of Defence Accounts, Southwestern Command Army, Jaipur. Conception and patronage by Shri Saroj Kumar, IDAS, Principal Controller of Defence Accounts, Southwestern Command Army, Jaipur. Chief Mentor and Reviewer Shri Himanshu Shankar, IDAS, Integrated Financial Advisor, Southwestern Command Army, Jaipur. Directed by Dr. Bhuvnesh Kumar Verma, IDAS, Joint Controller of Defence Accounts. Assistant Directors Shri Abhishek Sharma, IDAS, Shri Sushil Riyad, IDAS, Shri Mohan Lal Meena, IDAS, and Shri DK Oza, IDAS. Defence Accounts Department comes under the Ministry of Defence with the Controller General of Defence Accounts as its head. It is one of the oldest central government departments functioning for more than 270 years. The duties of Defence Accounts Department are broadly audit, payment, accounting and financial advice to armed forces, ordnance factories, border roads, DRDO, Coast Guard, etc. The department is also responsible for making payment of pension to retired armed forces personnel, including defence civilians. The quality policy is: the Defence Accounts Department is committed to render efficient, correct and prompt accounting, payment and financial services leading to customer satisfaction. It is also committed to render efficient audit services to ensure public accountability. The mission statement of our department is: we strive to achieve excellence and professionalism in accounting and financial services and in performing audit functions.
Minimum government, maximum governance is the present government's commitment, and being part of the administration, we are mandated to fulfill this commitment. As Defence Accounts Department, we are expected to provide effective financial advice, internal audit and efficient accounting services to Ministry of Defence and its organizations, including the three services. To achieve this, we require a clear sense of responsibility at all levels, integration of the existing work procedures with a dynamically changing work environment by constantly adapting to new challenges quickly in a professional manner. For this, we have to strengthen our workforce with the required knowledge and expertise through suitably devised training programs. In this direction, I congratulate Shri Saroj Kumar, Principal Controller of Defence Accounts, Southwestern Command, for conceptualizing and creating the training module for the Army Controllers for meeting the departmental training requirements. Such effort is all the more commendable since it has been undertaken during the period of COVID-19 pandemic related national lockdown and its related restrictions on office functioning and travel. I have assessed these modules and it is my opinion that the contents of each video tutorial are adequate for providing in-depth knowledge about the subject as also its practical aspects through examples and case studies. I hope this Army Controller Training module will become a milestone in imparting departmental training online and shall further motivate other controllers to develop similar video tutorials on other topics as envisaged in the DAD Training and Development Policies 2019. Moreover, development of e-learning modules is the need of the hour for training of our officers and staff. Once again, I feel great pleasure in conveying my best wishes to all the officers and staff involved for contributing to the development of these training modules in a comprehensive and effective manner, especially in view of the fact that the entire exercise was carried out by officers and staff members of Principal CDA Southwestern Command. I hope to see more of such innovative developments in future for enhancing the training functions of our department. I would like to end with these few lines from Shri Amit Arjun Bhardwaj, a motivational expert. कुछ करना है तो डटकर चल, थोड़ा दुनिया से हटकर चल, लीक पर तो सभी चल लेते हैं, कभी इतिहास को पलट कर चल, मिलेगा तेरी मेहनत का फल, किसी और का ना इंतज़ार कर, कुछ करना है तो डटकर चल, थोड़ा दुनिया से हटकर चल। थैंक यू। जय हिंद।
मित्रों, आज देश ही नहीं वरन संपूर्ण विश्व एक भयंकर त्रासदी से गुजर रहा है। ऐसी स्थिति में सभी प्रकार के कार्य बुरी तरह से प्रभावित हुए हैं, फिर चाहे वो सरकारी कार्य हो अथवा गैर सरकारी कार्य। हमारे विभाग का एक महत्वपूर्ण कार्य अपने अधिकारियों व कर्मचारियों के लिए प्रशिक्षण की उचित व्यवस्था करना है, जिससे हम अपने निर्धारित कार्य को सुव्यवस्थित, दक्षता एवं गुणवत्तापूर्ण ढंग से संचालित कर सकें। वर्तमान विश्व त्रासदी को देखते हुए आज सभी जगह सामाजिक दूरी एक अनिवार्यता हो गई है, जिससे कि हम स्वयं को तथा अपने आसपास के लोगों को संक्रमित होने से रोक सकें। इसी को दृष्टिगत रखते हुए यह सोचा गया है कि हम प्रशिक्षण में ई लर्निंग माध्यम को अपनाकर अपने अधिकारियों व कर्मचारियों को ऐसे किसी जोखिम से बचाते हुए दूरस्थ प्रशिक्षण के माध्यम से प्रशिक्षित कर सकें। रक्षा लेखा महानियंत्रक महोदय के मार्गदर्शन में ट्रेनिंग मॉड्यूल इसी सोच का परिणाम है और इसमें हमने उन महत्वपूर्ण विषयों को समाहित किया है जो सामान्यतया कमांड पीसीडीए सीडीए के लिए अति आवश्यक हैं। हमारे अधिकारियों और कर्मचारियों ने पूरा प्रयास किया है कि गुणवत्ता पूरी तरह से बनी रहे तथा वर्तमान नियमों अधिनियमों को भी सम्मिलित करने का प्रयास किया गया है। मुझे पूर्ण विश्वास है कि यह मॉड्यूल हमारे लोगों को समुचित प्रशिक्षण प्रदान करने में सार्थक होगा, जिससे वे अपने कार्यों को कुशलता व दक्षतापूर्वक संपादित कर सकेंगे। धन्यवाद।
सर्वश्रेष्ठ हो, सर्वप्रिय हो, कार्य करें सर्वोत्तम, यही हमारा मूल मंत्र हो, यही हमारा लक्ष्य परम। सर्वश्रेष्ठ हो, सर्वप्रिय हो, कार्य करें सर्वोत्तम, निर्मल मन हो सदा हमारा, निर्मल मन हो सदा हमारा, स्वच्छ ही परिवेश हो, नूतन का करके अभिनंदन, वैज्ञानिक दृष्टिकोण हो, वैज्ञानिक दृष्टिकोण हो। सर्वश्रेष्ठ हो, सर्वप्रिय हो, कार्य करें सर्वोत्तम, यही हमारा मूल मंत्र हो, यही हमारा लक्ष्य परम। सर्वश्रेष्ठ हो, सर्वप्रिय हो, कार्य करें सर्वोत्तम, यही हमारा मूल मंत्र हो, यही हमारा लक्ष्य परम।
Hi everyone, I'm Abhishek Sharma, Deputy Controller, currently posted in the office of PCDA Southwestern Command, Jaipur. I am also the Central Public Information Officer for my office. Continuing the ongoing online audio-video lecture series, today we shall learn about the nitty-gritties of Right to Information Act 2005. RTI is a central legislation which sets out the rules, regulations and procedures thereon regarding citizens' right to information. RTI is implicit in the Article 19 of Indian Constitution that is right to freedom of speech and expression. Hence, it is an implied fundamental right. This act has proven to be a milestone in beefing the democratic ideals further up by bringing in more and more transparency and accountability in public organizations, which are two basic aims of this act among others. They are also two important pillars of good governance, hence improving upon the public responsive functioning of the government and its various agencies. Now let's look at some of the statistics related to it. Over 3.02 crore RTI applications were filed with central and state government since the inception of this act 15 years ago. As per the 2019 State Transparency Report, Journey So Far and Challenges Ahead, a report by Transparency International India. This is worth mentioning here that India ranked 6th among 123 countries in Global RTI Index rating released in the year 2018. Further, score achieved by India in Corruption Perception Index that is released by Transparency International has significantly improved since this act came into existence. As you can see here, it was 2.78 out of 10 in the year 1995. In the year 2005, it was 2.9 out of 10, which has further improved to 41 out of 100 in 2019. Similarly, global ranking of our nation in the index has also improved from 88th position in 2005 to 80th position in the calendar year 2019. Now, we have two expert faculties with us today to deliberate upon the subject matter, Mr. Vijay Kumar Jha and Ms. Neha Atre. Now, I would like to invite Mr. Jha to brief us on how RTI came into existence, its salient features and its objectives. Thank you.
Friends, preface of the Act goes back to the year 1986. Almost 34 years ago, in Mr. Kulwal versus Jaipur Municipal Corporation case, the Honorable Apex Court directed that freedom of speech and expression provided under Article 19 of the Constitution clearly implies right to information. After a decade, a movement started in this direction named as National Campaign for People's Right to Information in the year 1996 with the objective of getting legislation on RTI. In 1997, Tamil Nadu became the first state to have passed a law on right to information. Consequently, many states has enacted their own law on right to information. Goa in the year 1997, Karnataka, Maharashtra and Rajasthan in the year 2000. The Freedom of Information Bill was passed by the Parliament in December 2002. Consequently, it was enacted by the then Government of India in the year 2004 on the recommendation of National Advisory Council as Right to Information Act, which came into force with effect from October 12, 2005. The basic aim was to provide information to all the citizens of India from any public authority relating to the administration, operation and decision, and to maintain the transparency and accountability in the working of public authorities. The first RTI application was filed at a police station in Pune by Shahid Raja Barni. Now, we will try to capture some of the salient features of this Act. The first point in this regard is its recognition as fundamental right established under the Article 19, right to freedom of speech and expression, and Article 21, right to life. This is very essential to ensure transparency and accountability, which are two important pillars of good governance. Moving on, we will discuss some of the objectives of this Act. The first objective is to set out a practical regime of the right to information. Furthermore, to secure access to information under the control of public authorities. In addition to above, to promote transparency and accountability in the working of every public authority. Establishment of the central and state information commissions for successful implementation of this act to contain malpractices and to hold government functionaries accountable, to preserve the confidentiality of sensitive information, to uphold the democratic ideals with an informed citizenry and transparency of information.
In continuation, now I would like to invite Ms. Neha to guide us on who can seek information, how someone can obtain information, how to file an RTI application online, prescribed fee to file RTI application, payment procedures, and intimation of additional fees under this act. All these points are very important from information seekers' point of view.
Moving ahead, let's see who can seek information under this act. Any Indian citizen is entitled to receive information. However, a company or a firm or a foreign national is not entitled to seek any information under this act. Now, we will deliberate on how information can be sought. Any Indian citizen may request for information either online or offline from a public authority. He or she has to pay the prescribed fee, which is currently rupees 10 as mentioned in Right to Information Regulation of Fee and Cost Rules 2012 for documents, etc. However, persons below poverty line need not to pay anything in this regard. As discussed earlier, RTI applications can be filed online through a web portal, namely RTI Online with URL https://rtionline.gov.in. This portal, developed by NIC, is a facility for the Indian citizens to online file RTI applications or first appeals. Further, payment of fees can also be made online through this portal. Now let's look at the procedure to file online RTI application. Firstly, visit RTI website and then click on sign up button to create a login. If you do not want to create a login, then continue as a guest by directly clicking on Submit Request button. After login or click on Submit Request, it will direct to RTI form page. The next step is to fill RTI form. Fill the required fields of the form carefully. Choose the government department or ministry from which you want to seek information. Write your queries and then click on Submit button. Once you click on Submit button, then final step is to make the fee payment. Two modes of payment are available there. First, internet banking through SBI Bank. Second, by credit or debit card or by RuPay card. Once you have made the payment, finally submit your application. On submission, a unique registration number is generated, which may be referred by the applicant for any future references. A question arises here: in which language can the application be filed before a PIO? The application can be either in Hindi or in English or the official language of the area in which application is being made. However, as per Rule 26 of the erstwhile CIC Management Regulation 2007, which has been quashed by the Delhi High Court, the second appeal or a reply to it can be filed before the CIC in English or Hindi only, or should be accompanied by a certified translated version of it in English or Hindi. We will discuss first appeal and second appeal in the later part of the presentation. Now let's see what is the prescribed fee for providing information under this Act. Fee shall be charged at the following rates, namely rupees 2 for each page in A3 or a smaller size paper, actual cost or price of a photocopy in large size paper, actual cost or price for samples or models, rupees 50 per disk or floppy, price fixed for a publication, or rupees 2 per page of photocopy for extracts from the publication. No fee for inspection of records for the first hour of inspection, and a fee for rupees 5 for each subsequent hour or fraction thereof. Further, if postal charges involved in supply of information exceeds rupees 50, has to be borne by the applicant. Now comes timely intimation about additional fee. The demand for the photocopying charges must be made soon after the RTI application is received, so that the information seeker has time to deposit the fees and receive the information within the prescribed 30 days period. If the information sought is not voluminous or is not dispersed over a large number of files, computation of the photocopying charges should not be a time-consuming task. As soon as the RTI application is received, the holder of the information should decide about how much information to disclose, then calculate the photocopying charges so that the CPIO can immediately write to the information seeker demanding such fees. Now let's see how fee can be paid. Fees can be paid in any of the following manner, namely in cash to the public authority against a proper receipt, by demand draft or banker's check or Indian postal order, and by electronic means to the accounts officer of the public authority if facility for receiving fees through the electronic means is available with the public authority.
Moving further, now Mr. Jha will enhance our knowledge on the type of information that can be sought, acquaint us about the public information officer and deemed public information officer, and procedure to file first appeal and second appeal.
Information which may be obtained under this Act. As defined under Section 2F of the Act, any information held in any material form, including records, documents, memos, emails, press releases, circulars, orders, logbooks, contracts, report, etc., can be obtained. In addition to above, data material held in any electronic form can also be sought as information. Furthermore, information relating to any private body can be accessed by a public authority under any other law for the time being in force is also available under this Act. There is an important point to be noted here that public authority must be the original custodian of the information which is being provided by the public information officer. Now, a question arises in this respect: are file noting included in the definition of information? Section 2F of the RTI Act defines information which include record. Section 2I states that record includes any document, manuscript, and file. The operative definition of a file include notes and appendices of notes, which are the part of file. DOPT has circulated that file noting are not exempted from disclosure. Thus, file noting can be disclosed under this Act. A question must have come to your mind: can reason be asked under this Act? In this regard, it is mentioned that the definition of information cannot include within its fold answer to the question why, which would be same thing as asking the reason for a justification to a particular thing. The public information authorities are not expected to communicate to the citizen the reason why a certain thing was done or not done in the sense of a justification, because citizen makes a requisition about information. Justification is a matter within the domain of adjudicating authority and cannot properly be classified as information. Now let's move ahead to who can be the public information officer in an organization. Public authorities have designated some of its officers as public information officer. They are responsible to give information to a person who seeks information under RTI Act. Now comes deemed CPIO. A public information officer may seek the assistance of any other officer for proper discharge of his or her duties. The officer whose assistance is so asked shall render all assistance to the PIO and shall be treated as PIO for the purpose of contravention of the provision of the Act. Further, if the officer whose assistance is sought by the PIO does not render necessary help to him, the Information Commission may impose penalty on such officer or recommend disciplinary action against him. CPIO shall have to provide information to the applicant within a period of 30 days from the date of receipt of application or request, but information related to life and personal liberty is to be given within 48 hours of the receipt of the application. Friends, now we will discuss about the provision related to dissatisfaction of an applicant with the reply provided by PIO. So, in this case, he or she may file first appeal to the first appellate authority of the department within a period of 30 days from the date of receipt of reply. Further, such first appeal shall be disposed of by first appellate authority within a period of 30 days from the date of receipt of appeal or within such extended period not exceeding a total of 45 days from the date of filing thereof, as the case may be, for reason to be recorded in writing. If the applicant is still not satisfied with the reply furnished by first appellate authority, then a second appeal against the decision of first appellate authority shall lie before Central Information Commission and State Information Commission, as the case may be, within 90 days from the date on which the decision should have been made.
I hope you all could get some clarity on various aspects of this Act, which are important from information seeker's point of view. Now, let's take some questions to know more on this subject. The first question in this regard is that in which language is the PIO expected to reply to the RTI application? Friends, the PIO should provide copies of the records in the language in which they are available. Particularly, the information is not required to be maintained in a particular language. The PIO is not expected to get into the role of a translator. The second question is, how should the PIO deal with applications seeking voluminous information? In such cases, the PIO may consider inviting the applicant to clarify if a broad application was submitted just because the applicant was not sure what was available. Such interaction can lead to narrowing down of requirements and avoid unnecessarily burden on the PIO. If the information sought is huge or is available at different locations, making it unavailable to make copies of every piece of paper contained in the relevant files, the CPIO may advise the applicant to inspect the files and identify the documents that are needed by him or her. In this case, use of advanced technology like the digital photography for scanning of documents may be adopted. Furthermore, can any citizen ask for any information that is more than 20 years old, even if it does not fall within the category of exemptions? Will the public information officer be penalized if he or she is unable to provide such information? Yes, any citizen can ask any information which is more than 20 years old, held by or under the control of a public authority, irrespective of whether the information requested falls within the category of exempted information or not. Nothing in the Act bars a citizen to ask for such information. The PIO concerned has to provide information held under the control of the public authorities subject to the provisions which are relating to exemptions as stipulated under this Act. In addition, if there is a case, in case record is already weeded out, what needs to be done? In addition, if a record has been destroyed legally, the question of penalization does not arise. But the RTI Act clearly requires a review of all weeding practices in existence to ensure that information which could be requested under this Act is not destroyed. More generally, it is necessary to consider a review of current record management processes. Continuing further, is a first appellate authority expected to give a personal hearing in every case? There is no provision in this Act calling for a mandatory hearing by the first appellate authority. If the applicant desires a hearing, the first appellate authority may consider it favorably depending upon the facts of the case. The next question in this regard, can a first appellate authority review its own orders? The answer is simply no. A first appellate authority does not have the powers to review his own orders. In case of a change in the first appellate authority, the new incumbent cannot revise the orders of his predecessor. Now, let's move ahead and invite Ms. Neha to elucidate about public authorities and their obligations in this regard.
Now we will discuss who shall be a public authority. Public authority, as described under this Act, is any authority or body or institutions of self-government established or constituted either by or under the Constitution of India or by law made by the Parliament or state legislature. Further, all bodies as notified by the central or state government, including those which are owned, controlled, or substantially financed by the government. It also includes NGOs which are substantially financed either directly or indirectly by the government. These kind of public authorities have obligations to maintain. Firstly, all their records should be duly catalogued and indexed to easy access of information. Further, they must ensure that all records that are appropriate to be computerized should be digitized within a reasonable time, subject to availability of resources. Every public authority must designate an officer as CPIO in case of central organization or SPIO in case of state organization in all administrative units and offices. Also to designate assistant PIOs as required. In addition to the above, public authorities shall have to publish all the particulars of its organizations, function and duties, powers and duties of its officers, procedure followed in decision making, statement of categories of documents held under its control, a directory of its officers and employees, budget allocated to each of its agency, details of monthly remuneration received by its officers, the manner of execution of its subsidy programs, and details of beneficiaries of subsidies. Now let's see which public authorities are exempted from providing information. Intelligence and security organizations specified in the second schedule of the Act are exempted from furnishing information under the Act. However, this exemption does not apply if the requested information pertains to the allegations of corruption and human rights violation. Here a question comes in mind, are different offices of an organization different public authority? It is mentioned that each PIO is not a separate public authority by himself. He is only a part of the public authority which has designated him as such. It is important to note that if different offices of an organization are taken as different public authorities, transfer of application can take place under Section 6(3) of this Act. Otherwise, the PIO should seek the help of the other officer under Section 5(4) of the Act. The transfer can take place only between two different authorities. Now comes information exempted from disclosure. Section 8 of the Right to Information Act deals with those information that are exempted from disclosure. These exempted informations are as follows. Any information disclosure of which would prejudicially affect the sovereignty and integrity of India, the security, strategic and scientific or economic interest of the state, relationship with foreign state, or lead to incitement of an offense. Any information which has been expressly forbidden to be published by any court of law or tribunal, or the disclosure of which may constitute contempt of court. Furthermore, any information the disclosure of which would cause a breach of privilege of parliament or the state legislature. Any information received in confidence from foreign government. Moreover, any information including commercial confidence, trade secrets, and intellectual property, disclosure of which would harm the competitive position of a third party unless the competent authority is satisfied that larger public interest warrants the disclosure of such information. It also includes any information available to a person in his fiduciary relationship unless the competent authority is satisfied that the larger public interest warrants the disclosure of such information. Here, a fiduciary relationship refers to a relationship wherein one party puts special confidence, trust, and reliance on and is influenced by someone else. For example, relationship between trustees and beneficiaries, attorneys and clients, doctors and patients, executors and administrators, etc. In addition to the above, any information disclosure of which would endanger the life or personal safety of any person, any information which would impede the process of investigation or apprehension or prosecution of offenders. Cabinet papers including records of deliberation of Council of Ministers, secretaries and other officers. Any information which relates to personal information, the disclosure of which has no relationship to any public activity or interest, or which would cause unwarranted invasion of the privacy of the individual unless it is satisfied that the larger public interest justifies the disclosure of such information. Section 8 also comes with another clause that provides a general exception to all the above exempted information. In Section 8(2) of the Act, it is stated that irrespective of provisions in Official Secret Acts 1923 or what is contained in Section 8, a public authority may allow access to information if public interest in disclosure outweighs the harm to the protected interest. Besides the above, information which involves infringement of copyright subsisting in a person other than the state is also exempted from disclosure under Section 9 of the said Act. And the intelligence and security organization or any information furnished by such organization to government is also exempted from disclosure under Section 24 of the RTI Act. Now comes third party information. According to Section 11 of the RTI Act, third party information can be provided only by the approval of third party. When the person wants the third party information, then the authority has to send a notice to the third party asking for the approval that whether the third party allows providing the information. If the third party allows, then the information can be disclosed. This is a procedural safeguard that has been inserted in the RTI Act to balance the rights of privacy and public interest involved in disclosure of such information. The concept of privacy is incorporated in Section 81J of the RTI Act. Moving further on disclosure of personal information. As directed by the Supreme Court of India in the matter of Girish R. Deshpande versus CIC, the performance of an employee or officer in an organization is primarily a matter between the employee and the employer, and normally those aspects are governed by the service rules which fall under the expression for personal information, the disclosure of which has no relationship to any public activity or public interest. On the other hand, the disclosure of which would cause unwarranted invasion of the privacy of that individual. Further, such information could be disclosed only if it would serve a larger public interest. Thus, access to ACRs are powers of an employee or officer. Deductions by an individual into his and her payslip are not provided as information under this Act.
Moving further, let's discuss couple of questions in order to understand the topic information as exempted in this Act. The first question in this regard is, if a case is still under consideration, that is, whether it is live or is a current file for final decision, can that file be made available to the requester before the decision has been taken? The answer is, our request cannot be rejected on this ground. The requester will have to be given the requested information. It is important to note, however, that such disclosure cannot run contrary to the provisions of this Act that exempt certain categories of information. If so, the PIO cannot provide such information, but has to clearly state the reasons for not doing so. If a partial disclosure is possible and is not exempted, then the PIO shall disclose the part of the record. Moving ahead, the second question comes to my mind is, what if existing department manuals prevent disclosure of information to the people? My friends, all such manuals were drawn up before the RTI Act came into existence. These manuals will have to be reviewed in the light of the new law, and all procedures for denying access to information will have to be done away with unless they relate to the exempt categories of information. Even in the case of exempt information, the manual should be designed in a way so as to facilitate complete or partial access in public interest. All new departmental manuals likely to be drawn up in future must conform to the new regime of transparency set up under the RTI Act 2005. Now, let's discuss the timeline for providing information. Right from when the information is sought till the second appellate authority gives his or her decision. The public information officer should supply the information within 30 days from the date of receipt of the application. However, if the information sought is related to life or liberty of a person, it has to be provided by the PIO within 48 hours. The transfer of application to another PIO under section 6(3) of this Act should take place within 5 days from the date of receipt of application. Furthermore, if the request for information is received through the APIO, the reply should be given within the period of 30 days plus 5 days, that is 35 days in normal course, and 5 days plus 48 hours, that means 7 days in the case the information sought concerns life and liberty. In addition, if application is sent to a wrong public authority, 5 days shall be added to the period of 30 days or 48 hours, as the case may be, to provide information. Further, if a PIO has to issue notice to a third party, it will be issued within 5 days from date of receipt of application. Continuing, if a third party makes a representation to PIO, it has to be done within 10 days from the receipt of the notice. If the third party is involved, the PIO can reply to the application within 40 days from the date of receipt of application. Further, the first appeal can be filed by the applicant within 30 days from the date of receipt of PIO's reply or from date when reply was received. The first appellate authority should pass an order within 30 days from receipt of the first appeal or 45 days from the date of filing of the first appeal. If applicant wants to make second appeal, if he is not satisfied with the reply or response given by the first appeal, the applicant makes second appeal before either Central Information Commission or State Information Commission, as the case may be. It has to be done within 90 days from receipt of first appeal orders or from the date when orders were to be received. There is no time limit for CIC or SIC to decide second appeal. Now, you must be wondering if there is any penal provisions in this act which may be invoked in case information is either not provided or denied without any reason or reason not found to be justified. The Central Information Commission and the State Information Commission can impose a penalty of rupees 250 per day till application is received or information is furnished, and the maximum limit is rupees 25,000 if the concerned PIO has refused the information or gave wrong information without any reasonable cause. Friends, now Mr. Jha shall deliberate on statutory bodies and its powers and functions such as CIC and SIC.
Moving ahead on statutory bodies, there are two statutory bodies constituted under this Act, namely Central Information Commission and State Information Commission. Central Information Commission, it consists of the Chief Information Commissioner and other Information Commissioner not exceeding 10 in number. All members are appointed by the President of India on recommendation of committee chaired by Prime Minister of India. They shall be a person of eminence in public life with wide knowledge and experience in law, science and technology, social services, management, journalism, mass media, or administration and governance. Now comes on State Information Commission. It consists of the Chief Information Commissioner and other Information Commissioners not exceeding 10 in number, appointed by the Governor on recommendation of a committee. They shall be person of eminence in public life with wide knowledge and experience in law, science and technology, social services and management, journalism, mass media or administration and governance. The powers and function of CIC and SIC are to receive and inquire into a complaint from any person who has been refused access to any information requested, has not been given a response to a request or access for information within the time limit specified. A applicant has been required to pay an amount of fee which he or she considers unreasonable. If Commission believes that he or she has been given incomplete, misleading, or false information, any other matter relating to the Act. Central Information Commission or a State Information Commission shall have all the powers of a civil court while handling an appeal or complaint under this Act. The Central Information Commission can hear appeal from a State Information Commission or from the appellate authority of each office. Now, let us discuss who is a transparency officer. The Central Information Commission has created the designation of the transparency officer to implement to proactive disclosure by the public authority and improve the record maintenance practice. The CIC directed that each public authority shall designate one of their senior officers as transparency officer within 30 days. The tasks of the transparency officer are to oversee the implementation of Section 4 obligation by public authorities and to apprise the top management of its progress. To be the interface for the CIC regarding the progress of above. To promote congenial condition for positive and timely response to RTI request by CPIO, deemed CPIO. To be a contact point for the public in all RTI related matters. Now, I invite Ms. Neha to discuss some of the other aspects.
Moving further, we will discuss transfer of applications. According to Section 6(3) of the RTI Act, if an application is received by a public authority seeking an information which is held by another public authority or which is more closely connected with the subject matter relating to another public authority, the public authority receiving the application should transfer the application to the concerned public authority within 5 days. If a person makes an application to a public authority for information, a part of which is available with that public authority and the rest of the information is scattered with more than one other public authorities, in such a case, the PIO of the public authority receiving the application should give information related to it and advise the applicant to make separate applications to the concerned public authorities for obtaining information from them. If no part of the information sought is available with it, but is scattered with more than one other public authorities, the PIO should inform the applicant that information is not available with public authority and that the applicant should make separate applications to the concerned public authorities for obtaining information from them. Now, only such information which already exists and is held by the public authority or held under the control of public authority is provided. It is beyond the scope of the Act for a public authority to create information. Collection of information, parts of which are available with different public authorities, would amount to creation of information which a public authority under the Act is not required to do. At the same time, since the information is not related to any one particular public authority, it is not the case where application should be transferred under Section 6(3) of the Act. It is pertinent to note that subsection 3 refers to another public authority and not other public authorities. Use of singular form in the Act in this regard is important to note. Now comes suo motu disclosures. Section 4(1)(b) of the RTI Act lays down the information which should be disclosed by public authorities on a suo motu or proactive basis. Section 4(2) and Section 4(3) prescribe the method of dissemination of this information. The purpose of suo motu disclosures under Section 4 is to place large amount of information in public domain on a proactive basis to make the functioning of the public authorities more transparent and also to reduce the need for filing individual RTI applications. The following information are to be disclosed: information related to procurement, public-private partnership, transfer policy and transfer orders, CAG and PAC paras, citizen charter, discretionary and non-discretionary grants.
Friends, I hope You must have learnt about the various provisions of this Act so far. Now, let's take some more questions to further understand some of the other important aspects from public authorities or public information officers' point of view, which were not covered earlier. The first question in this regard is, if the information given by the PIO in response to a request turned out to be wrong, false, or misleading, but the PIO was not responsible for the creation of that record or such information, will he or she be penalized by the ICs? The answer is, RTI Act provides protection to the PIO for actions taken in good faith. If the requested record has not been prepared by the PIO but by some other officer, or if the data compiled by the PIO was received from some other officer and the PIO merely passed on that information to the applicant without having prior knowledge that such information was either wrong or false or misleading, he or she is not guilty of an offence under the RTI Act. The Information Commission will penalize PIO only in such cases where they may find him or her guilty of giving wrong, false, or misleading information in a malafide intention. The next question in this regard is whether complaints can be made under this Act. If yes, under what conditions? If any person is unable to submit a request to a public information officer, either by reason that such an officer has not been appointed by concerned public authority, or the Assistant Public Information Officer APIO has refused to accept his or her application or appeal for forwarding the same to the public information officer or the appellate authority, as the case may be, or he has been refused access to any information requested by him under the RTI Act, or he has not been given a proper response to a request for information within the time limits as specified in this Act, or he has been required to pay an amount of fee which he considers unreasonable. Apart from the above, if he believes that he has been given incomplete or misleading or false information, he can make a complaint to the Information Commission. Friends, the next question lies, will the APIO be punished for giving wrong or misleading information just as PIO can be penalized under this Act? The answer is, under this Act, the Assistant Public Information Officer's obligation is confined to forwarding the request to the PIO concerned forthwith, within 5 days time period. The question of punishment for an APIO for giving wrong or misleading information in this regard does not arise. In one of its decisions, the Chief Information Commission has stated that the APIO has a very limited role of transmitting applications and appeals to their proper destination, and that the APIO's responsibilities are not coextensive with the PIO. The next question in this regard is, will a PIO be penalized if the superior officer orders him not to release information to the requester? Friends, it is a very tricky question. It needs to be mentioned here that the PIO must note that it is not necessary on his or her part to seek the permission or approval of a superior officer of the public authority concerned for providing information under his or her control. the Act is very clear about the fact that the PIO is an independent authority under the law and no approval is required from any superior official to release the requested information. Hence, if a PIO acts upon any order of his or her superior and subsequently rejects requests fully or partially, he or she is liable to be penalized under this Act. Let's take one more question. When can the compensation be claimed by the requester of information? The claim for compensation has to be linked to any loss or other detriment suffered by the complainant in relation to failure to comply with the provisions of the RTI Act. Information Commission does not have any power or jurisdiction to decide and adjudicate commercial disputes and award compensation to the applicant under section 19(8)(b) of this Act. The power to award compensation under this section of the Act is restricted to cases of loss and detriment suffered by the complainant for failure of a public authority to comply with the provisions of the RTI Act. There may be some cases where applications are flooded to the PIO and it demands the inspection of records. How will the PIO provide access to all the applicants and also do justice to his or her other designated duties? What if one such applicant mutilates or destroys a record during inspection? The answer is all the PIOs may fix 1 or 2 particular days in a week for inspection of records. The competent authority needs to make rules and guidelines for public authorities regarding the procedure to be followed for allowing inspection of records. That is, the Public Records Rule 1997, Rule number 11, subsection 2, prepared by the Government of India, may be adopted in this case as a model. It is important that the PIO takes adequate precautions for the safety of records that are being inspected. If, however, it is found that a person examining a record or document has mutilated or tampered with the document or attempted to do so, it will be appropriate for the PIO or public authority to lodge a criminal complaint immediately. Let's take one more question. The PIO continues to be under the purview of the Official Secrecy Act, OSA of 1923. How will he or she reconciles his or her duties under the RTI Act with the secrecy required to be maintained under the OSA 1923? It must be noted that the provisions of the RTI Act 2005 shall be effective notwithstanding anything that may be inconsistent with its provisions in the Official Secrets Act or any other act of the Union or the state government. In this regard, please go through the chapter 6, section 21 of RTI Act 2005. The next question in this regard is, what is the jurisdiction of the courts? Friends, lower courts are barred from entertaining suits, applications or other proceedings against any order made under this Act. However, the writ jurisdiction of the Supreme Court as well as the High Courts under Article 32 and 226 respectively of the Constitution remains unaffected. Let's take one more question. Can a public authority use an advocate during the proceedings of the RTI Act? Friends, as per the CIC Appeal Procedures Rules 2005, in deciding the appeal, the Commission may hear the PIO, APIO, First Appellate Authority, or such person against whom complaint is made, while the appellant may seek the assistance of any person, including someone who may not be a legal practitioner. The PIO has not been given the similar option. That means public authority or PIO cannot take the help of an advocate during the proceedings of the RTI Act. If the question whether an organization is a public authority or not has not been settled, it may use the service of a lawyer. This is all about the Right to Information Act 2005. I hope you all have enjoyed the presentation. Wish you best of luck. Thank you.
यत्र धर्मोआ धर्मेण सत्यम यत्रावृत्तेन च हन्यते प्रेक्षमाणास्तु हतास्तत्र सभासदा। अर्थात जिस सभा में बैठे सभासदों के सामने अधर्म से धर्म और झूठ से सत्य का हनन होता है, उस सभा में सभी सभासद मृत समान होते हैं।